important. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it will. I mean, they've done it once. You had it right, so they just follow. Mm-hmm.
Just cheer that, man.
My sister got hers at Zebulon this afternoon.
No.
Close enough. Call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone here this evening. It is a joint meeting of the Town Board and the Planning Board for the purpose of 5 public hearings. So we'll get right to business, and the first public hearing is TA 2021-01, Building Maintenance and Regulations. I'll call that to order and ask for staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, members of the planning board. The first item on the agenda tonight is text amendment 2021-01. Specifically, it's relating to our downtown building regulations. The staff is requesting an amendment to Chapter 95 of our Code of Ordinances. Please note that this is not part of our Unified Development Ordinance, but it's part of the General Law Ordinance. The proposed request would change the title of Chapter 95 from garbage, rubbish, and weeds to property maintenance, and it would add in several sections at the end of Chapter 95 as it pertains to downtown building codes to ensure a minimum level of maintenance, as well as a requirement for vacant storefronts to have some sort of a display feature into them. These regulations that would pertain to the building maintenance and the storefront regulations would only be included for the downtown periphery and downtown core zoning districts, and it would be limited to non-residential structures, specifically retail, former retail buildings, or other buildings that would have a storefront would be applicable to these regulations. It would not pertain to the heavy commercial or the other more intensive commercial districts. To kind of recap of where we're at right now, these are the current conditions in downtown. We do have a wide variety of buildings, both occupied, vacant, and underutilized. The building on the left, for example, is undergoing renovation, but it's been undergoing renovation for several years now. The property owner just put paper up in the front windows to prevent folks from seeing in. Then we have buildings that are underutilized, such as the middle building there, that's been used for storage for quite some time and has blinds blocking so you can't see the items that are being stored. And then finally, the building on the right had been vacant for quite some time and was recently being used for storage purposes. Those have moved out, but it's right there on Arundel at a very prominent intersection, and it could be much better utilized, either occupied or some sort of a display type indicator. We also have buildings that have undergone some modifications. The building on the left, as an example, they bricked in the first floor windows and they covered the second floor windows with stainless steel. The building in the middle has undergone a really nice renovation, especially on the interior, but it hasn't been occupied yet. There are some furniture pieces in there, but realistically, there's still a little bit more to go to really create that sense of vibrancy. And then the building on the right, this building has had a little bit of a history with the town in terms of slow progressive maintenance concerns. You may recall at one point this building actually had the metal grates that closed up, kind of like the fencing type structure, and a large sign that was projecting out that was about to fall down on somebody. Fortunately, working with the property owner with the regulations that were in place at that time, we were able to work with them to get those items removed. However, since then, just brown paper has been put up on the inside so you cannot see into the interior of the structure. We've also had some buildings that have had partial improvements or code enforcement corrections. The building on the left, you may recognize the one with the red awning is the Forum Barum site. And just recently, that property owner took down the canvas portion of the awning, but left up the framing for the awning, indicating that he wants to put an awning back up, but instead of taking the whole assembly down, he left the framing up. We did work with them with some other code enforcement violations. I'll get to that in the next slide, but there's still a long way to go. And then the building on the right, they began construction, but because of financial constraints, they were unable to complete the project, move to another community. So that building sat vacant in this condition for approximately a year and a half now. As I noted, we were able to successfully work with one of the building owners, but there was a lot that we could not do. They did repair the brick where the bricks were about to fall and create a health hazard for those in the newly activated alleyway. As I know, they took down the awning and they did replace the windows. The window as well as the brick, those were immediate health safety things that needed to get addressed as quickly as possible. So that brings us to where we're at tonight. The proposed text amendments would require property owners to repair broken windows within a timely manner, clean and repair damaged and dirty awnings, repoint and repair damaged bricks, repair and clean signs, as well as just maintain the property to a minimum standard that would be acceptable for our community. The other thing that takes a step further is to prohibit coverings over the windows that create a sense of vacancy for those particular locations, because we want the exact opposite. Our 2030 plan calls for vibrancy as opposed to vacancy. It also would require window displays in vacant storefronts. You may ask, okay, what does this look like? It could look something like this. This would be a great opportunity for local business owners or building owners to partner with either Preservation Zebulon or ZDAC to bring in photos of historic Zebulon to hang in the windows, or maybe contract with ZDAC to put in like different art displays that could be circulated. It could be anything from a mural on the left-hand side to just temporary display case windows for smaller forms of arts as indicated on the right. It can also be seasonal. As noted on the screen on the left, local building owner Dallas Pierce took it upon himself to actually put a display into the window of the vacant Barron's building. It was a building that had no use or activity, but that display in the front window helped to really reframe the intent of that building. It no longer was kind of a deficit in our downtown, but it helped to create a continuous sense of vibrancy. Same thing with window paintings, and it doesn't necessarily need to be isolated to Christmas. Other different events, 4th of July, it really lends the opportunity to create that sense of excitement, especially if they change up on a seasonal basis. It creates something new for folks to come and see every time that they come into downtown. The other is working with different groups based on the social issues of the day. It can be working with colleges or other institutions and getting messages out there, like with COVID relief, vaccination, testing. These are all opportunities for these different organizations to share a message as well as meet the requirement, because that too helps create a visual interest within these buildings as opposed to just a vacancy. Finally, the displays don't have to be super complicated. Some of you, I know one planning board member in particular, may recognize these renderings. This is what the Barham's building could look like, well, hopefully will look like, where it's a vibrant restaurant, open up the second floor. That's a vision that is in the future, but having that vision can easily be expressed as something as simple as putting that vision and those renderings in the window. Fortunately, Dallas Pierce already took the step forward before these regulations are even put in place to do exactly that. Same thing with the other buildings that he has under renovation. He showed what these buildings will look like in the future as opposed to just leaving them boarded up while they're under construction. Little things like that help to create that vibrancy that we're searching for in accordance with our 2030 strategic plan. To kind of summarize, the proposed regulations not only will set a minimum threshold on what it'll take for these buildings to be put in place, but also require that display element. We're not looking to use this as a really big 2x4 type stick to clobber down business owners, but we want to work in concert with these building owners to formulate a plan and a realistic time period for these regulations to be put in place. We realize this is not going to be an overnight fix, but having communication with these building owners, laying out the processes, the steps, possibly even the funding, whether it's they utilize the facade improvement grant or one of the other opportunities that are out there to renovate the exteriors of these buildings. Same thing with the visual element. We want to make sure that we work with them. As I noted, it can be very ornate where it's a display type gallery in the front windows, or it can be something as simple as working with preservation. Zebulon for historic photos, or working with local schools to put up art that the kids have made in the school district. I know as a parent, I'd be thrilled if my first grader had a piece of art sitting in a display in a window. Yeah, even if it's in a vacant building, but at least it's on display. It's a great opportunity to really partner with the local organizations. And one thing that I really want to get across is this isn't just about code enforcement. It's also about economic development. In 2002, Southern Business and Development magazine went as far as saying, when site searching the South, make sure you inspect the community's downtown first, because they realize that that is the heart and soul of every community. That is where the vibrancy starts. If a community is invested in its downtown, it's probably going to be invested in other places. Yes, the interior corridors where you have entryway and gateway signage, 97, 96, 39, Old 264, all those gateways coming in, that's significant. But making sure you have the downtown well-established is probably one of the biggest key economic benefits that a town like ours will have. Think about all the other communities that have this type of vibrancy. Wake Forest, Apex, it's because they have a vital downtown that's constantly growing and improving. As it is, Wake Forest just recently approved regulations similar to this to require that display element. And with this, I'm going to close with a statement that Ed McMahon, not the actor, the planner, said that a community's image is fundamental to its economic well-being. And the image of downtown is the image of Zebulon. And I'm available if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions from either board?
I think this is a great idea. I'll take off my mask. I just have a question, because I remember, I don't know how long ago it was, there was a conversation about window coverings in occupied businesses and those being like an extended advertisement or extended part of their sign, and that being out of regulations. But is there going to be any kind of literature in here about what can or cannot be displayed? Because I could see maybe some people taking advantage and making a statement with what they display. So that's my question.
Yes, and that's why they would have to work with staff to formulate a plan to put it in. Obviously, it would have to be appropriate in the context for the environment that it's in. It wouldn't be commercial advertising. Those sign regulations that were mentioned previously, those signs were isolated to windows that didn't meet the intent in the window. Okay, you couldn't see into it. But these are primarily for the windows that you would have at the ground level at your primary storefront.
So I have a few things.
Yes.
Section 95.63A, just a little, it says does not.
Yes, okay, thank you.
And then section E of that same, or line E of that same thing, it mentioned rotting.
Mm-hmm.
There's no definition of rotting, so what do we mean by rotting? Or do we need to have a definition for quote unquote rotting?
Will be contained in the kiln, hangings, brick, for other required maintenance.
That's exactly what I was
Okay.
looking at. I was checking the definition of disrepair, because it essentially falls into that same category. I'll take a look at that, and if there's a better word that we can use, we'll definitely change it up.
And then under section H, so do we need to add that the signage needs to be consistent with the UDO requirements? My concern is that they may take liberty as, let's cover the window with a big rent me sign or a lease me sign or something like that, going beyond those UDO requirements of signage for those buildings.
Yes, that's a good suggestion. We'll put that in. Okay.
And then my last one, sorry y'all, under the penalties for failure to comply, I didn't see anything for failure to register. Are we considering any kind of penalty for failure to register as a vacant building?
We should. Thank you for cleaning that up.
And that's all.
And with that, with the failure to register, I'm going to check the other provisions of Chapter 95 because I think that there's another section of enforcement that might be better suited for that particular violation.
Okay, it just needs to be addressed.
Yep.
Yeah, so is there anything in here or anything that would allow us to address the vacant buildings that are being used for non-conforming uses, such as storage or hazardous materials or vacant lots that are just compiling vehicles and things like that? Because at this point, there are buildings that I've seen or that I know of that are storing things that should not be stored in the quantities that they're being stored, even under the North Carolina Building Code.
Yeah.
So how do we address that?
From a use classification, if it's an existing legal nonconformity, that we have to wait till that nonconformity status expires. However, from a maintenance side, these standards would still be applicable. So if we have a building that has an existing legal non-conforming use, and the building is not in compliance of the maintenance standards, we can pursue the maintenance standards, just not the use of the structure.
Okay. Does this also apply to vacant lots?
We have a different provision for vacant lots in terms of tall grass and weeds that's in existence.
But does that address the storage of items that shouldn't be there?
If it's a use violation for items that shouldn't be stored there on vacant lots, then that's a different violation
Okay.
entirely.
All right. I'll bring those up later.
It sounds like you have a site in particular that you're asking about, so afterwards, let me know.
Yeah, I'll bring that up with you specifically.
I'm sorry, I got one more. So in all of the text, it talks about the appearance of disrepair, and we're requesting them to fix the appearance. We're not, is that necessarily saying you must make the repairs or make it look like it's repaired?
Well, that's where the plan comes in, is you work with staff to establish a plan to make those necessary repairs as defined in the beginning of the section, whether
Okay.
it's decay or other elements that express a sense of or a vacancy.
Because I know the one section about windows, it was about boarding them up and making them look operable. It wasn't necessarily fix the windows.
Well,
So that's why I'm like, are we requesting that they actually fix the stuff or make it look like it's fixed?
when possible, have it fixed, but we do have situations where, such as the second floor of Whitley Galleries, it'd be wonderful if those were fully operable windows. But they took the steps to make them appear as if they were operable windows. If it's a first floor and it's evident that it doesn't even look like it appears to be an operable window, that would be a very different situation. And obviously, first floor for commercial fronts, most of those are not going to be truly operable windows anyways. It's going to be something like a storefront window or a panel glass. And in some situations, they might end up using spandrel glass, which is a non-transparent glass application that they use for restaurants, as an example. So there's ways to make it look like a window without it being a window.
Okay.
Commissioner Baxter, you had a question?
Other questions?
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, I do have just a couple of
Sure.
things. Going back to the does not,
Yes.
it says that exteriors of building structures on the property shall be painted. In some cases, the exterior doesn't need paint. Brick, for example. There may be situations, and most of the illustrations you showed there were brick.
Yeah, we'll change that and to an or, so painted or maintained in a way that does not appear the vacancy.
Well, that way you'd have to go paint a brick building that you might not want to do for architectural features or whatever. But-
That's correct.
Okay. Would you elaborate on Board of Appeals?
With most of these, with most of the violations in our general law ordinance, if somebody receives a notice of violation and they feel that they should not have received it, our code of ordinances allows them to appeal that request to the Board of Appeals. It's a similar situation that we've used in the past for minimum housing cases, or they receive a notice of violation for a use. A while back, we had a use violation that came in where we indicated that the use appeared to be one thing, the property owner said was something different. It went to the Board of Adjustment. Essentially, it's the same process with this. They can appeal the planning department's determination on that request to the Board of Adjustment. If the Board of Adjustment does not find in the applicant's favor, they can appeal it to Circuit Court at that point.
Okay, but what you're saying is that the Board of Appeals is the Board of Adjustment.
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to be clear about, that it wasn't a separate
No.
board that we had there. So, would that be true if, and I think I know the answer to this, but I want it on the floor. Would that be true if you said, okay, you have to do this, and this, and they said, no, we don't want to do it that way, and you said, well, that's the way it needs to be, they would then appeal that to the Board of Adjustment to make that call?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that was on the floor. That's the way that would work. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Concerns?
I'm sorry, one more. So in the last section, the preemption, it also talks about except as specifically preempted by 160D. But I thought that was something that has not been provided yet. Am I correct in that, or?
Yes and no. When it comes to our Unified Development Ordinance, we have not made the text amendments to correspond, and even some of the general law text amendments. However, everything new that's going forward needs to be consistent with 160D. The state did make that effective last June as part of one of the COVID relief bills, but they gave municipalities up to 1 year to make the necessary modifications to their local ordinances to bring them into compliance with 160D. So moving forward, we could not reference 160A. We have to reference 160D for all new regulations moving forward.
Okay, but that doesn't change anything in our documents as we have
This
laid
does not
out
change
here.
anything in our
Okay.
document. It just saves me one less text amendment that I have to make here in in 2 months.
Understood. Thank you.
From the board. Okay, thanks, Mike. Anyone that would like to speak on this issue, for or against?
Good evening. My name is Amanda Cruz, and my sister and I are owners of the Creative Cup, 113 North Arundel. And I just wanted to say that as a business owner, and we've spent countless efforts in time, money, and detail to the front of our new storefront as we're coming into downtown. I don't know if you've seen it lately, but it's changed quite a bit already, and we have a lot more planned. But currently, it's quite disappointing to look next to you as a business and see a building that looks in disrepair and run down. I think that this applies to current open businesses as well as businesses that are used for storage. I know that that as we move forward in growing Zebulon, specifically in the downtown area, I think that we need to create a unified look, and I think that this plan will help do that. I think we all know that if you go downtown to any town, you start to get a vibe. And right now, I feel like that our town is giving off mixed signals. We have great businesses that have come and done great things to their building, like Simply Blush or Old Raleigh Distillery. Whitley Gallery looks fantastic. And then you're right next to a building that you can tell hasn't been repaired or maintained in years. And then they're operating a business out of there. So I think that it will not only help the appearance of our downtown, but it will also help create a new atmosphere for the entire downtown area. You know, if you're walking, we're trying to create a vibe of walking down and just being invited into the town. But if you're passing building after building that looks in disrepair, that looks like it's not occupied, that it doesn't invite you in. So let's say your business is 10 in and they're walking past all these, they may turn around thinking that there's nothing there. Why would I want to continue? So this is really important in that unification. I think that it's really important that we invite our walkers down, our visitors. We're getting a lot of visitors into town now with the opening of Old Raleigh, also with Simply Blush. They bring a lot of people from other areas. So it's really important for that unified view. I can also speak as a board member for ZDAC and say personally that we've put a lot of effort into the arts part of downtown and making it look great in certain areas. But again, when you're fighting that with business owners who aren't willing to take time to keep things up and to make it look good with you, it really gives an off feeling. I will also say that my sister Eve and I, who are owners together of the Creative Cup, we've been doing some research with and meeting with several downtown coffee shop owners to make sure that we can bring Zebulon the best of the best. And there are neighboring towns, such as Franklinton, that have already established a plan like this, and it's really great to see, where they've come from and where they are now, establishing this unified look downtown for empty buildings as well as ones that are already occupied. I thank you for your consideration and for hearing me out, and I hope you'll give it some thought. Thank you, guys.
Anyone have any questions?
Oh, yeah. Any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Yes, Al.
I'm Dallas Pierce, and good evening to the Board of Commissioners, Planning Board, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say a few words. I really would like to commend the staff for making this recommendation. I think it's one of the best things I've seen happen to the town in many years. We're investing a lot of money down there, and we're having a good time doing it, I think. We're doing it anyway. And we have got some things going on that I'm excited about, and I'm really, hopefully soon, you'll see some boards come off the fronts, and you'll see some good things happening. We've got big plans for the Barham Building. We've got big plans for the other buildings. The buildings beside the Barham Building they are almost got that ready to put back. And hopefully those storefronts will be one of the first things they'll put up on those two buildings. We've got the Barham Building. If you've looked at the plan that we just, Michael and I just put up this past week, the renderings, it'll be open up second floor of the Barham's Building, rooftop bar on the back overlooking the alleyway, and there'll be a terrace, outside terrace dining upstairs overlooking Main Street. Inside to be a two-story. We'll have outside dining on the sidewalk. We're going to recess that wall back so you can actually eat outside on the sidewalk and upstairs. I do think, I agree with Amanda, it is, we got a lot of people coming to town. Old Raleigh has opened it up. I'm really thankful for what Brandon's done. And we are on the right track. You folks are on the right track. You really need to pass this ordinance, and you need to really do that. Like I said, we're investing a lot, and that's the way it should be. You cannot have revitalization without renovation. Somebody's got to go in there and spend some money. Somebody's got to take the risk. And I've had a lot of people ask me, who was I renting these buildings to? I said, I don't know. They say, you mean you go in there and spend all that money, you don't know who you rent? I said, I don't know, I have a clue. I'm willing to take that chance, and I've taken that chance. And I would ask this board to take the chance with all of us. Please go down there and set the standard where we can all shine. Please make it mandatory for these property owners to put some skin in the game, put some pride in their ownership, and make this town flourish the way it's trying to. There's thousands of people coming here. They want things to do. They want places to go. Downtown is the best investment I've ever seen. Jump on board. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Please.
Mayor, I've got written comments.
Yes.
These were submitted by Teresa Piner on behalf of Brandon McCraney. They are much needed change in the downtown is to progress forward and provide a welcoming environment for the community. The town's proposal will have a positive impact on existing businesses and create basic standards by which building owners should adhere to as we strive to make downtown Zebulon a destination location for the region.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, if not, I'll close the public hearing.
Mayor, I've got opposition. I've got comments.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay, these comments are from Chuck Corbett. The proposal seems well-intended but is totally unnecessary unless the ultimate goal is government ownership of private property. The condition of commercial property is 100% market-driven, and nowhere is that more obvious than downtown Zebulon. If you were here and paying attention through the Great Recession, this should be obvious. Empty streets, vacant buildings, and disrepair were the norm. The proposed rules, regulations, and consequences would have served only to worsen the situation and could possibly have led to tax foreclosures. Presently, we are enjoying a strong local economy. Renovations and remodeling are robust, and available buildings are occupied. Commercial sales and leasing activity has never been stronger. Downtown is waking up and looking better every day. Every empty building on Main Street is in play of some sort. TA 2021-01 serves no purpose other than create more bureaucracy, requiring more time required by staff by town staff, and possibly another staff position to fill and pay for. Too much staff time has already been wasted on this, and I know there's plenty of positive projects to pursue. That's it. That's all. That's it.
All right, all right, now, I will close the public hearing and refer the matter to the planning board for their recommendation back to the town. Okay, the next public hearing is CZ Old US 264 Zebulon Outdoor Storage. I'll call the meeting to order and ask for staff report.
We got it.
No, they got kicked out.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, planning board members. The case before you today is CZ 2026, Zebulon Outdoor Storage. The applicant is John Oglesby with CSD Engineering. The owner is Zebulon Outdoor Storage. Property address is 1817 Old US 264 Highway. Parcel size is 15.28 acres. The existing zoning is heavy industrial. Proposed zoning is heavy industrial conditional. This slide is the 5 standards that you will evaluate the case if decided upon tonight. The applicant is proposing to rezone the subject parcel from HI, heavy industrial, to HI, conditional. This is a vicinity map. As you can see, the parcel is, in this aerial photo, is wooded. The Duke Energy site is to the adjacent east. Across Old US 264 Highway is the US Foods Warehouse. And then to the adjacent west is a vacant parcel. As you can see here, the aerial shot shows the site's wooded, and then the Duke Energy site to the adjacent east. If you look real closely, you can see with the Duke Energy site that there is asphalt and pavement along the public areas of the operation, and then towards the rear where the storage and the company vehicles would be is where the site is using gravel. This is the zoning map, as previously stated. Heavy industrial, you have heavy industrial to the adjacent east. You have heavy industrial to the adjacent west. To the north, you have R2, and then to the south, where the US Food site is located, is light industrial. This is the posted sign looking westward towards 5 County Stadium. You can see the Mudcats water tower in the distance. It's looking eastbound. US Foods warehouse is located to the south on this picture. The reason I brought up the aerial photo was this is what the site looks like today. It was lumbered prematurely. Our Unified Development Ordinance requires a site plan to be submitted before there's any land disturbance on the property. The applicant did submit conditions. There are 8 conditions. The first condition is that there be a maximum of 80% site coverage with wash stone surfacing and grass parking areas. The second condition is the entrance apron will be approximately 250 feet off the access road. And this is the concept plan to kind of give you an example or an idea of how far 250 feet is this is where Old US Highway 264 is located, and it would probably approximately go back to where the security gate is. So that would be the 250 feet. That would be either paved or concrete or asphalt, excuse me. The third condition, that there will be additional landscaping along the paved access road between pavement and the security fence for additional screening of the parking areas within the fence. The fourth condition, there shall be a total of 40 feet type D opaque buffer between the security fence and the old US 264 highway. The standards of this type D opaque buffer are every 100 linear feet, you'll have 4 canopy trees, 8 understory trees, and 35 shrubs planted 3 feet on center. And this highlighted area is showing you where this type D opaque buffer would be located on the site. Condition number 5, there should be a total of 30 feet of type C semi-opaque buffer between the US 264 highway controlled access right-of-way and the security fence. The 20-foot width of existing vegetation trees within the property boundary will not be disturbed. Give you an idea of what this type C semi-opaque buffer is every 100 linear feet, you'll have 3 canopy trees, 6 understory trees, and then 25 shrubs planted 3 feet on center. And then along the western boundary, identified as Wake County, pin 2715737661, there'll be a 20-foot semi-opaque buffer. And to show you where this buffer would be located is along where this area is highlighted. And as I stated previously, that's a vacant parcel to the adjacent west. Condition number 7, there shall be approximately 400 feet of 6-foot wide concrete sidewalk adjacent to old US 264 highway, approximately 1 foot inside the existing right-of-way. Just to give you an idea, the linear frontage of the parcel is 700 feet, so this would almost be half of what the town would require for a sidewalk along that street's frontage. And then the 8th and final condition is the applicant will apply for annexation within 30 days. This is a concept plan submitted by the applicant. The main reason for this conditional rezoning request is they want to use the parking area, the driveway access outside of that condition, and the condition of the internal drive. But any other drives, parking stalls, or vehicular service area would be gravel. The staff recommend that they go through the conditional zoning process because it is a deviation from code standard 5.8.5 F1, which requires materials be asphalt, concrete, or of sufficient thickness for any parking areas, driveways, or vehicular service areas on developed sites. We've been upfront with the applicant on, we wouldn't support this being a 100% gravel operation. That's the reason for them to come forward with the conditions, to go through this legislative process. We talked about doing something similar to the Duke Energy site to the adjacent east, and then we advised them on a rezoning case that we had a few months ago back in 2020 on the Green Pace Road, which we approved office buildings with gravel towards the rear, but all the public areas on that conditional zoning would be asphalt or concrete. On that site, there's also additional screening with fencing and landscaping. But the main reason for the staff recommending approval of the Green Pace Road zoning was the primary uses were office or warehouse uses. Some of the concerns staff has with the proposed gravel lots are traffic volume and weight. Many uses within the heavy industrial district attract and generate high traffic volumes and heavy weights. The gravel requires more frequent maintenance and degrades quicker when exposed to all weather events than other surface treatments such as asphalt, concrete, or pervious surfaces. The second concern staff has is public health and safety. The quicker the degradation of gravel exposed to higher traffic volumes, heavier traffic loads, and all weather events produces unsound surfaces for parking, storing, walking, and ADA accessibility. And then the third and final condition is code enforcement. Improperly maintained private lots are largely out of town control and the resolution of these issues requires an inordinate amount of staff time to resolve, and the allowance of gravel in the heavy industrial district would magnify the number of frequency of these issues and pull resources away from addressing other code enforcement needs throughout the town. And once again, these were the 5 standards. The first is whether the proposed conditional rezoning advances the public health, safety, or welfare. The second standard, whether the extent to which the proposed conditional rezoning is appropriate for its proposed location and is consistent with the purposes, goals, objectives, and policies of the town's adopted policy guidance. Third standard, whether an approval of the conditional rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest. The fourth standard, whether the extent to which the concept plan associated with the conditional rezoning is consistent with this ordinance. And then the final, 5th standard is any other factors as the Board of Commissioners may determine to be relevant. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Questions from either board? Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Anyone wishing to speak in favor?
Yes, I'm John Oaklesby from CSD Engineering.
It's in
I can't hear anything that's being said right now.
Who wants to speak? Which one?
I'll go first and then John will.
in favor or opposed?
It makes no difference at this point. Come ahead.
Thank you.
I'm not opposed, I'm in favor.
You're going to have to speak into the mic, please.
I'm not opposed, I'm in favor. Is it all right if I go ahead? Oh, I'm opposed to, I'm in favor of approval. I'm opposed to staff's recommendation to not approve, if
Okay.
that makes sense. I'm speaking on behalf of the property owner. Okay. So, get my mask off here so y'all can see me. Good evening, Mayor, Board of Commissioners, and Planning Board. Thank you so much for hearing me. My name is Ashley Honeycutt-Terrazas. I am a land use attorney. I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way. I'm very pregnant. I'm due next week. But I'm here tonight because this is the only hearing I agreed to do in the month of March because I know the most about the case. I've been involved with negotiations with staff, and I really think this is something that y'all should approve. You know, me mention this, but really this entire case is about Mr. Perry's ability to install a semi-pervious crushed stone lot rather than an asphalt lot for his desired second location for his business. You know, many of y'all might know Tommy. Wave your hand. Yeah, he owns Zebulon Road Storage. It's another facility up by the Wake Lawn Elementary School and the Dollar General. So this would not be his first time doing a project like this. And this is not a typical rezoning case like what I normally handle. We don't need any additional permitted uses on the lot. Our intended use is already permitted and nobody disputes that. And we're really here tonight in an attempt to cooperate with staff because they requested that we do this as a conditional rezoning as opposed to an administrative approval, which we believe is allowed under the EDO because of the precedent of this other Green Pace Road conditional rezoning case in which the property owner will be allowed to install a crushed stone lot with some conditions. Administrative approval would have been faster, but it's allowed us to add these additional details and assurances to the town. So just a little history. Mr. Perry bought this property last year with the intention to add, you know, like I said, his second location, expand his business, you know, and provide a place for residents to store their recreational vehicles. Well, because, you know, neighborhoods and subdivisions don't allow you to with HOA regulations. The property is currently zoned heavy industrial, and I have in my presentation, I don't know if we can pull that up, but I know all y'all have a paper version that shows the zoning on this property and then the surrounding zoning. I think there were some issues with the presentation earlier today, so I brought paper copies. And then I also have it, on the comprehensive plan circled, so we're in the highway business on the comprehensive plan map. But we've been told, that y'all are reworking your comprehensive plan, and in the new plan, this area may be more of a retail mixed-use area centered around the 5-county stadium right down the road. And frankly, we believe that the long-range future of this property is some kind of job-creating light industrial or retail complementary to the 5-county stadium, but there are currently no business prospects for either of those, and it'll likely be a number of years before something like that would be economically viable for this property. And so this rezoning will allow an interim use of equipment and vehicle storage for community citizens and generate increased tax revenues for the town and county until a permanent or industrial retail use is economically practical. This property is currently in the ETJ, in Zebulon's ETJ, but we are proposing that we apply for annexation. All the other properties around us are annexed, and so then that way the town is going to receive the financial benefit of the tax revenue while this area is still developing. And a use like this also doesn't require a lot of resources from the town, so you won't have to, you'll get the tax revenue without having to spend the money on the lot. And our proposal to use the crushed stone surface will allow us to move forward with this project now while making it much easier in the future for this property to redevelop than pulling up a bunch of asphalt. So we're going through this process because we genuinely believe that crushed stone is going to be a better paving surface for this site and for this use. It's the material that Mr. Perry has always used at his other facility. He's very familiar with the practical benefits as well as how to maintain it. For example, a crushed stone surface allows him to change the parking layouts if he needs to. So instead of having to draw lines on pavement, he has markers that he can move around if he needs to change up the layout a little bit. It's also easier to maintain with lots of heavy vehicles going in and out. And it's also better for the environment to use a semi-pervious material as opposed to an impervious surface material for a lot of this size. But I'm not an engineer, so John Oglesby, our project engineer, is going to come up. He'll explain more about improved stormwater infiltration, characteristics of crushed stone when compared to asphalt, as well as how the crushed stone that we're proposing, the type that we're proposing to do, will be a sufficient thickness and durability for the proposed use. So, you want to come up, John? Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a little bit more. I'm going to go through the conditions after John speaks.
Okay. Any questions on what's been presented thus far? Okay, thank you. You come back in a minute.
Good evening. I'm John Oglesby with CSD Engineering. Commissioners, Planning Board, Mayor, thank you for this time. I am the applicant. I've been moving forward with the land planning processes and been working with staff and in this conditional rezoning as well. And I really appreciate the assistance from Ashley and her team. She asked me to come up and speak to some of the technical aspects of gravel versus a rigid or flexible pavement. Crushed stone, it will hold up under heavy loadings. It can be routinely maintained for required and improved performance. For example, there's more flexibility in where you put it, how you put it, and you can adjust thicknesses to get the required performance that you need. The proposed design for this lot will be, the base layer will be an aggregate base course placed upon a geotechnical fabric or geotextile fabric that over the soils in place. That stone is also known as ABC or crush and run, and it compacts well and provides a foundation for most pavements and many other things, pipes, building foundations, etc. It's a very commonly used material for base foundations. The thickness of that base layer is determined by the in-situ soils that are underneath, the fabric that you place, and the desired loads you wish, to put on the gravel. The soil and compaction of the stone will be tested by a geotechnical engineer, and they will recommend thicknesses, soil treatments, and that will hold up under the anticipated traffic. The surface layer will be a different type of crushed stone. It will be a uniformly graded or uniformly sized gravel, number 5 stone, washed, and it will provide additional strength, and it can be maintained more efficiently than the crush and run. The surface stone will help mitigate the most common issues with a ABC or crush and run surface, and that is erosion and what they call washboarding. You put the surface stone layer on there, it will mitigate those issues quite effectively. And based on observations in my career and in life, asphalt pavement does not hold up well under loads in especially heavy traffic in a stop and go condition. For example, you see severe rutting and cracking in asphalt pavement in loading zones for commercial businesses, at dumpster corrals, which now we're required to do reinforced concrete pads, but we're not going to pave 9 acres with reinforced concrete pads. That is not feasible. And if you go to truck stops, it is a nightmare. The asphalt is cracked, potholes everywhere, and it's hard to maintain, and you can't keep up with the maintenance with these heavy loads. They do the best they can, but maintenance is very complex and very expensive on these paved parking lots with this heavy traffic. One of the other issues I wanted to discuss tonight is stormwater runoff. I've spent the majority of my career as a civil engineer analyzing, studying, and designing the conveyance and treatment of stormwater runoff. I often reach out to my other stormwater colleagues to stay sharp, as we all have to do in our careers. Iron sharpens iron. One of my colleagues, who I went to undergrad school with, is a leading stormwater guru in the state of North Carolina. I reached out to him many times and discussed runoff from crushed stone, and I reached out to him in this instance to talk about this project and, to try to come together and see what we both could reasonably expect from this project specifically. First of all, we're not asking for any credit for crushed stone, meaning we're going to design stormwater conveyance and treatment for an impervious surface. The gravel surface, with gravel on the surface, it will extend the time of concentration, and that is the time it takes the water to concentrate and get to the conveyance measures. And we're proposing grass swells for higher treatment from this runoff. Asphalt pavement is 100% impervious. Every bit of stormwater will run off of that surface, and it will, quite frankly, overwhelm a grass swell or a similar conveyance measure. I've seen this in my career, have to go in and retrofit design measures from large asphalt parking lots that are continually blowing out grass wells, check dams, and everything else. It is a nightmare. And this is a large area you're talking about of runoff. Gravel will slow down the water and cause it to be less flashy, which means a whole lot of water in a short amount of time. It is a consensus in my industry that through observation and detailed studies that crushed stone is most pervious, which means it allows infiltration when it's first installed. But over time it becomes compacted, but it never reaches 0% perviousness. There's still always an opportunity for infiltration. Where asphalt, it is no infiltration from when you install it until you're done. One thing that's interesting is pollutant loading for nitrogen, phosphorus, zinc, lead, and copper and runoff from a gravel surface is similar to what it would be an asphalt or paved surface. However, studies have shown that the phosphorus is much lower off of a gravel surface. Reference a study that I've looked at that my colleague and I have discussed, and he actually knows the people that wrote this report, and the name of the report is Stormwater Runoff Quality and Quantity from Asphalt, Paver, and Crushed Stone Driveways in Connecticut. And speaking with my colleague about this report, he is very, very interested in studying this, reaching out to his colleagues that wrote this report, and he is going to the state legislature to seek funding to study this, to study the quantity and quality of stormwater runoff on gravel, crushed stone parking surfaces as opposed to asphalt. He's tried to do it in the past in North Carolina, but funding got pulled. He's going to try again. I feel like Tommy would be in agreement to let my colleague and I put some drip buckets out there to do some water sampling and collect data that will be quite useful moving forward in understanding the runoff from gravel versus asphalt and the benefits of each. We can reasonably agree that the pollutants from oil and grease will be reduced from a gravel surface. But we can also, my colleagues and I can agree that total suspended solids or sediments will be higher off of a gravel lot. However, expecting that, I can design stormwater conveyance measures that can be maintained and mitigate those concerns. Grass swells with check dams that Tommy can easily clean the sediment out from behind the check dams. They're easy to reach, and we get the benefits of the grass swells to remove the nitrogen, the zinc, and the copper, and put the nutrients back in the ground and not let them run off into our surface waters, which are already very nutrient sensitive in this area. That's really all I have. If you have, I know that's a lot of information. I hope I put it together in a way that you can understand. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those at this time.
Okay, questions from either board?
So I have a few questions. You mentioned the degradation of asphalt when it's stop and go, but we're not talking about stop and go. We're talking about storage. These are long-term storage facilities where the vehicles are sitting. It's not a stop and go situation, correct?
It is a stop and go. It's a parking situation, but it's not long-term. The parking is ideally for those who drive a tractor trailer that can't park their tractor trailer at their home, so they drive their personal vehicle to the site, get out of their personal vehicle, crank up their truck, move it out of the way, leave their personal vehicle in that spot, then do their work, whether they're gone all day, a couple of days, or a week. And when they return, they park their truck there and get in their personal vehicle and go home. Now, there will be some longer-term storage, and Tommy can, with boats and RVs and stuff like that, but we're not talking tremendous loads there. The commercial traffic, the larger trucks, They need to be on the road working to make money. I don't think anybody can store a large tractor trailer on a lot for a long period of time and have a economically feasible business.
Understood. The 250-foot material, the going into the, what is that going to be? Concrete, or is it asphalt?
Right now, we're looking at an asphalt thickness probably of 2 to 4 inches.
Okay.
However, there may be a requirement by DOT to do a concrete apron, but right now we're proposing asphalt, and DOT will probably approve an asphalt. Regardless, it has to be paved, and Tommy would like the entire entranceway for 250 feet plus to the security gate to be a paved surface, which is asphalt proposed at this time.
And so I drove by this lot prior to the meeting. There's significant runoff on that lot already, and it goes down to kind of a creek kind of bed or whatever. Almost looked like some swampy area at the bottom, which I'm assuming is this back portion, phase 2 of this project. Am I correct in that?
What's that?
When I drove by the property in question, there's significant runoff where the trees have been removed already. And there's a creek bed, and beyond that creek bed, it looked almost like a swampy, kind of a pond kind of look to it.
Yes, we're permitted through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to drain that pond.
Okay.
And that was done back in October.
And so is that
swampy
part
area,
of
and
the,
we cannot touch that for about 9 months. And then once 9 months, the U.S. Army Corps will come back out there, and they will determine whether that stream is going to be a jurisdictional water or waters of the U.S., and if any wetlands form out there. That's the swampy area. But let me speak on the trees being cut. That area was not disturbed.
that wasn't my question, my concern. My question is that area back there that has the current runoff, this pond that you've drained, is that part of this development to eventually put gravel in that as well?
No, there will probably be no gravel in that low area. The gravel will be up on the larger areas, as you see on.
They all have a copy of it.
Yeah. And what we're planning to do is grass swells along the bottom of those that will go to dry detention basins, and there will be stormwater conveyance and detention before it goes into that area. Most of the runoff you're getting right now is from the NC 39 interchange. There's a 30-inch NCDOT pipe directly outfalling onto his property. That's where most of that runoff is coming from right now. We're not going to treat that. We can't. But we're going to treat any improved surface that is put on that site. And it will be graded in a way. There's a lot of things we can do, and with gravel, there's a lot more things we can do to keep the water, slow it down, and put it in swells and into dry detention basins.
But regardless of gravel or asphalt, you still have to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
No matter who develops that land, whether we require gravel or asphalt, you still have to do those stormwater issues have to be addressed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and at the beginning I said we're not asking for any credit for doing gravel. We're going to design for impervious surfaces and meet all the requirements for conveyance as well as stormwater treatment, quality and quantity.
But if it was asphalt, you would still have to do the same?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we're not asking for any credit to get out of having to do stormwater control measures or stormwater management.
Okay.
I've got a question about your interpretation of the impervious versus perviousness of the gravel. In every jurisdiction that I've ever worked in, gravel is considered impervious.
Yes, it's considered impervious, and we're going to treat it as it's impervious with regards to stormwater control and conveyance.
So, but what you're saying is you're slowing down water with something that's impervious, is what you're saying.
You're
contradicting
the physical
yourself.
characteristics of gravel will slow down the time of concentration, meaning especially in the top surface layer.
Yeah,
The water
no,
will go in there,
yeah.
and it will take a lot longer for it to run off of a gravel area than it will a slick paved area.
Yeah, I understand that. So what I'm not understanding is it does that at first, right? So in 3 years, now that crush and run is almost solid, right? And we keep adding new stone on top of that. So now we're just keep packing and packing and packing.
Correct.
So now we're going from a pervious surface in year 1 to a almost impervious, completely impervious surface in year 5. So then what do we do at that point? Now we've just gone back to the beginning of our issue with having an impervious surface with asphalt, right? So now we're back at what do we do with all that stormwater?
Well, with asphalt, you have zero opportunity for infiltration.
Yes.
Regardless of how long gravel is there, it will never get to 0% pervious.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So my question is we're not really gaining anything with using the gravel by your definition of an impervious surface.
We will gain, time of concentration is very important in determining volumes and estimation of runoff. It will take longer for it to run off of a gravel. Therefore, our conveyance measures will have time to receive, and what it receives from the first will be gone when the second comes. Asphalt is all there, boom, you got 100% volume like that. Gravel, it's more delayed.
Can you tell me what those
hydrographs,
Can you tell me what those
hydrograph
ratios are? Can you tell me what those ratios are? Can you tell me what those ratios are, just so everyone understands what the difference with the conveyance rate from asphalt to gravel is?
Well, it depends on the length, how far it has to travel and all that. I haven't done detailed calculations on this site.
So that's something we would need then, right, to make this determination?
I think we can reasonably expect that the time of concentration would be extended, and we will not have the same runoff characteristics on gravel that we will on asphalt. And I have a report here, and I'll be glad to make this available to anyone.
Yeah, if you could, we would, because this is definitely information that we need for that
She has several
determination.
copies here, but I'll skip straight to the conclusion of this report, where they did detailed studies over a long period of time. It said even with decreased infiltration, the use of crushed stone is preferable over the traditional asphalt material for control of non-point source pollution.
Okay, so that's pollution, not runoff.
But this also discusses
Okay, can you just
quantity as
can you make
well.
that available for us in our determination of this
Yes.
issue? Okay, yeah, please.
So here it says infiltration rates at both the crushed stone driveways declined somewhat over the course of the study, though they were still greater than zero infiltration measured on the asphalt driveways. Yeah, I studied this, and then, like I said, discussed it at depth with my colleagues, what we could reasonably expect without having to do all the detailed calculations. And, I can predict with experience and doing this all my career that there will be a different characteristic of runoff. It'll have more sediment in it, but I expect that, and we'll design measures to mitigate that.
So, I'm sorry, a couple more real quick. Am I correct that if we were to approve this gravel, that's it? There's no plan for future paving or anything like that, future improvement? Unless there are code concerns with the maintenance not being met.
Correct. Well, Tommy can have the option to do what he needs to do, but Ashley has said here that This is kind of more of an interim based on a comprehensive long-term plan, that this site could be something completely different. I mean, we're not building permanent structures. We're putting in a fence and some asphalt for entranceway and gravel. It can be that this would be a perfect site if the economy and demand so pushed it this way. Could be an infill site for something else. So yes, it could be buildings, it could be a high-rise hotel on this site with asphalt one day. But as far as Tommy's concerned and what he's doing, he would have the option to do something like that because we will already have designed measures that can handle it.
My final question is, there was talk of grass as well. There's somewhere in there it said gravel and grass.
Well,
is part of this lot going to be parking on grass?
Probably very little, but there is an option if with a product called GeoGrid to reinforce the soils in some areas for some overflow parking.
Okay.
But it would be a grassed area. But that is something that could happen to keep it open space and grassed and not gravel, but you could still park something there for overflow parking.
Okay.
That was thrown in there just for the possibility there may be overflow parking in areas that they can do that.
I'm good.
Other questions?
Sorry.
Other questions, any from the board? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I can just throw out there that, we don't currently have a condition that if this is ever redeveloped, the paving requirement would be reinstated, but I think that's something, that we could add in there if y'all are interested in that. I'm back up here mainly to talk about our conditions and why we included the conditions that we did. Those are I did a summary of them in the presentation if you want to look at that. So we crafted these conditions with guidance from staff. We sought to craft something that would mitigate the impact of using crushed stone as opposed to asphalt to pave the parking lot. This project has not raised any concerns from neighbors. There was a neighborhood meeting and nobody, asked us for anything, had any concerns about this. So the bulk of these conditions were to address staff's concerns. And the primary concern that was always raised to us, that was always raised to me, were aesthetic concerns for this, even though this is what we believe to be an interim use. And our response was and continues to be that we need to consider the context of this property along this corridor. This is not a residential area. There are numerous crushed stone parking lots, including 2 very large gravel lots at the 5-County Stadium in this area. And I think the 6th slide in the presentation is like an aerial view of that corridor right in there and has all the star is over this lot and then the circles are on the other gravel lots along that street. But, even so, we wanted to work with staff and we wanted to address these concerns and to add and increase required screening and buffers. And the plan that I had Stacy pass out to y'all shows our updated site plan that includes those conditions and shows the buffering and screening that we're proposing along the borders of the property. And in fact, several of the conditions that we're proposing are taken directly from that other conditional rezoning case that you recently approved on Green Pace Road. Staff sent that over to me and I think like 3 of the 15 conditions in that case had to do with the crushed stone lot, and so I tried to craft some conditions that mimic that. In spite of the differences between that area and the area in which this property is located, arguably there's more commercial and residential closer to that one as opposed to this one, which is definitely a more industrial area. And And just remember that this is an interim use. When long-term development project is economically viable, permanent paving and other UDO requirements will be implemented. And like I said just a minute ago, if we need to put that in as a condition, we can. And in the interim, we believe that the vegetative screening that will be provided around the perimeter site is beyond what the code requires. Well, it is beyond what the code requires. It is sufficient to screen from view the interior of the adjacent property and from the adjacent properties and rights of way. So staff also raised some concerns to us and to y'all about the crushed stone lots not being well maintained, which is why we did add a condition about maintenance in there that we would regularly maintain it. But I think the best response to that is just the last slide in the presentation, and those are some pictures of Mr. Perry's other site, the Zebulon Road storage, taken just last week of the gravel lot that he maintains there. He's proven that he's a responsible property owner that knows how to take care of a crushed stone parking lot. He employs a company to come and help him with vegetation control. And those pictures show that. It's a nice looking lot. He's never received neighbor complaints or enforcement actions about the way that he maintains that lot. And so, he's proven that he knows what he needs to do. And finally, we added a condition that we would install some sidewalks on the site. And I know it's not required right now. There's no other sidewalks in the area. If you look at the aerial, there's no sidewalks anywhere. But we were told that this area may be slated for sidewalks in the forthcoming transportation plan that hasn't been published yet. So we decided to preemptively add some sidewalks. And we did 400 feet, but if it needs to be more, if that's a concern, obviously we can address the length of the sidewalk. So I'll just wrap up. We're asking for this conditional rezoning because of this precedent set by the Green Pace Road case, and then we want the crushed stone because it's practical, primarily because of its practical benefits. Also, John discussed some environmental benefits, and for this particular project, which is primarily a parking lot. And finally, our project has no opposition, and we hope that it'll increase revenues for the town while providing needed services to residents while this area is still developing. So, really this case is basically about whether this lot gets to be put to a productive use that generates revenue for the town or whether it remains vacant. And that's all I have.
Okay, for the second time. Are there any questions from the board?
Yes. So you just made a statement that some of the other properties by the applicant have vegetation control by a contracted company.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume, and please tell me if I'm wrong, that vegetation control is going to be through the use of herbicides?
I do not know. I'm sorry, I don't know that I'm not familiar with what exactly they do. I just know that he employs a company to help him so that the grass doesn't grow up through the gravel.
Well, so my concern, of course, is then that with statements being made that this is a pervious material that is then impervious but still kind of pervious, that there's going to be herbicide that is actually transmitted into perhaps even the water table.
I don't believe that's been an issue at the other site. I don't know, John, if you have anything to say about
If you
that.
want to speak to that, Mr. Oates, you need to come
Yeah.
back to me. I'm sorry, but we record this and.
Yeah, we want everybody to be able to hear, I understand.
The most common use is a granulated pre-emergent and not a spray. And you know, whatever's in stormwater runoff that infiltrates will infiltrate. How far deep it goes, don't know.
Well, even if it runs off, it's going to run off.
Into a conveyance measure, into stormwater detention, and it will be removed through biological processes before it has a chance to get out. Now, 100% will not be treated. However, you've got the same noxious chemicals running off of asphalt and in carbons and a lot higher phosphorus, which is probably could be argued or reasonably expected or more harmful. Oils and grease.
Oils and grease are going to, I mean,
there will be left runoff in the surface water. It will be absorbed into the material. It runs straight off of asphalt.
Okay.
Yes. Any other questions about the infiltration?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, any further questions from anyone?
Other conditions or anything like that on
Are you finished?
it? Yeah, I'm done, if nobody has any questions.
All right. Hearing no questions, then we'll close the public hearing and refer the matter to the planning board for their recommendation. And I thank everyone for their input. All right, we now have RZ 2020-02, 1513 North Rendell Avenue, staff report.
Once again, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, members of the planning board. The next three items are actually corrections to the Unified Development Ordinance when the new zoning map was put in place. To save time, these three parcels previously had different zoning classifications than they have now, and the proposed zoning map amendments are to correct those situations. The first is 1513 North Arundel, also better known as Bojangles here in the town of Zebulon. It is currently currently zoned light industrial. However, staff is proposing to rezone this back to heavy commercial. The previous zoning district was heavy business, and heavy commercial is the most appropriate corresponding lane classification. As everybody's probably aware, it is located on Arundel between Green Pace and the 64-264 interchange, right next to the BB&T Data Processing Center. The site is fully improved, mostly impervious surface. It does contain a fast food drive-through restaurant. And as I noted, the parcel is currently zoned light industrial. All of the surrounding parcels, with the exception of the parcel just to the south, which we'll get to in a moment, is zoned heavy commercial. The parcel across the street is heavy commercial conditional zoning. That was the conditional zoning request that came before you late last year, actually one of Mr. Perry's properties, where they were requesting it to conditional rezoning to put in a drive-through restaurant. This is the site looking south. This is from the curb looking at the building. And with that, I am available if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board? Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak on the issue? Everybody here will have to ask. All right. Okay, we'll close the hearing and refer the matter to the planning board for their recommendations. Okay, RZ 2020-03, 49 Green Pace Road.
Okay, this is the next of the rezonings. The subject track is a portion of 49 Green Pace Road. It is owned by BB&T, but it is the track just south of the Bojangles. It is currently zoned light industrial, and we're proposing to rezone it to heavy commercial. As you can see here, 49 Green Pace Road does cover quite a bit of land. However, the portion that's being requested to be rezoned is just the small section where their entrance drive is, or one of their entrance drives located just south of Bojangles. This is a little bit better view of it. And as you can see, the rest of the BB&T site is currently zoned heavy commercial, so this would bring that section consistent with the remainder of the parcel, as well as correct the previous Unified Development Ordinance regulation. Similar to the last one, with the exception of the adjacent parcel that is owned by Bojangles, everything else is zoned heavy commercial. Staff does recommend approval of this, and these are the site photos going onto the site. And I'm available if you have any questions for this one.
So how was this just a portion of the property? Were these separate properties at some point in time, and they've been?
Yes.
Okay. Because I just don't understand how a portion of a tract of property gets zoned incorrectly.
BB&T actually, up until last year, they owned several different tracts, and they did what's called a recombination plat. It's where they come in and request that all of their different parcels become one parcel.
Okay.
However, that only changes the property lines. It does not change the zoning classification.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and refer the matter to the planning board. I'll call RZ 2020-04, 213 Moss Road into session.
Okay, this is the final of the three corrections. This is 2013 Moss Road. It is owned by Wilbur and Teresa Pulley. It is currently zoned R2. However, in the previous zoning code, it was zoned heavy business. And that was the zoning classification that the applicant requested some years ago for an operation on the site. Staff is proposing to restore the commercial zoning classification to heavy commercial, which is the most consistent of the uses compared to the previous zoning code. As I noted that this would correct the previous Unified Development Ordinance error, and I should go into detail with that. It was a technical error with the GIS files. Unfortunately, at that time, we did not have a GIS technician that probably would have been able to discuss or discover this, but we worked with our GIS technician, and she pointed out that these were the three that really need to be corrected based on the use and activities. It is located on Moss Road. This is zoomed in. There is auto repair facility type garage located at the front of the parcel. I do not know if it's in operation. I've gone out there a couple times. I've not seen any vehicles parked there. But as you know, the parcels right across the street are zoned heavy commercial, whereas the rest of the surrounding parcels are zoned R2. Staff is recommending approval of the proposed request, and this is a photo of the sign as well as the auto repair garage facility that's on the site. And then this is facing south, I believe. And I'm available if you have any questions for this one.
I have one question, kind of a procedural or technical question. When the property across from Bojangles was misclassified, didn't that property owner pay a fee and have to incur expenses to get it corrected, when in turn it looks like we're doing all of these free of charge?
For the property across the street, if they were to come in with just a traditional, regular rezoning, we would have waived the fee to correct the error of the Unified Development Ordinance. However, they requested a conditional rezoning, which does take additional time, and additionally puts additional conditions and factors onto the parcel that would not be pertinent to any of these other ones.
Okay, so it was above and beyond just correcting how it was zoned.
That is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay.
Did we have written communication on this one?
I did not.
Okay.
Didn't have one.
All right. Okay, anyone wishing to speak on this matter? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, propose matter to the planning board. And thank everyone for their time this evening. I will ask my board for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
To adjourn.
We're jumping at it all. Are you all packed and ready?